They're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. I'm just standing. I will always stand in their way. The harder they hit, the better we do. When I get back into the Oval Office, we will totally obliterate the deep state. We will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption. By the way, they spied on my campaign. They got caught. Can you imagine if let's take Barack Hussein Obama. Let's say we spied on his campaign, you got caught. What do you think would happen? You think it would just be some stories in only a few newspapers, because most of them don't even want to write it. They would have brought back the electric chair. That's what they would have done. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. Unequal justice. And I will require every federal employee to pass a new civil service test. How about the president? Let's start with the president. Demonstrating an understanding of our Constitution. To stop the local Marxist prosecutors who release rapists and murderers while persecuting conservatives. On day one of my new administration, I will direct the DOJ to investigate every radical district attorney and attorney general in America for their illegal, racist, in reverse enforcement of the law. If you want to really see something that's said, if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened. Oh.
After Barack Obama got elected, Mitch McConnell was in your position, and he basically bucked political science. He did an experiment. Take on a very popular president who has a very popular agenda, make every effort to block that agenda without any regard for the polls, and then just sit back and wait for the voters to punish the governing party and reward you for being obstructionist. It seemed crazy and almost outrageous at the time to people who were observing it in the moment.
And if he comes up with a really good trade position, we're not going to just necessarily say no. But we're going to hold his feet to the fire. And I can assure you of this. Anything we're going to support will get almost no Republican votes. That may mean we support him on nothing. But we're not going to sacrifice our principles for the sake of compromise. But the bottom line is, I mean, our main job here is, as I said, hold his feet to the fire. It's not going to be to sit in a room and say, where can we compromise, where we can't. If he proposes things that might, he said he was for closing the carried interest loophole. I'm not going to vote against it if he proposes it. All the Republicans will, but I won't. I think we should close the carried interest loophole. So there are a few examples here, and I'm not going to rule them out. But most of the things we're going to be talking about, whether it's health care or education or transportation or helping the poor or voting rights or guns or choice or Planned Parenthood, we're going to oppose them tooth and nail. The consequences are going to be down the road. We are not going to settle on a Supreme Court nominee. If they don't appoint someone who's really good, we're going to oppose them tooth and nail. Now then, they won't have 60 votes to put in an out-of-the-mainstream nominee, and then they'll have to make a choice, change the rules. It's going to be very hard for them to change the rules because there are a handful of Republicans who believe in the institution of the Senate and don't change the rules. But we are not going to make it easy for them to pick a Supreme Court justice. It's hard for me to imagine a nominee that Donald Trump would choose that would get Republican support that we could support. You see, here's what's going on here. Trump ran against the Democratic and Republican establishments, against both. Trump, as president-elect, has been totally captured by the hard right. The Koch brothers were opposed to him in the campaign, and that will make him a failure. I said this to him. You know, he's called me occasionally on the phone. I said this to him. I said, if you just get embraced by the hard right, and I named Vice President Pence and a few of the others who are pushing him in that direction, you will be so far away from where the average American is, even the average Trump voter was, the non-bigoted parts of them who were just want to change because they were so upset. You'll be a failure. And I don't think he gets that. He didn't say anything. and then him just out there tweeting, it's not going to work. And we have an opportunity. As the Chinese say, danger is opportunity. So I was distraught right after the election, but I'm now actually invigorated by the challenge and our ability to succeed in this challenge.
But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
Let me tell you, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them. You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. Let me tell you, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. Even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this. He's being really dumb to do this. Businessman, he's being really dumb to do this. Even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look what happened. What happened? What happened?
You've been sitting here for over 3 hours, and I have you know the entire country is demanding you resign and demanding that you be fired if you do not resign. Things are not going well for you. You need to answer the questions.
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job. Let's talk about things that are prohibited in Trump rallies. And I've been to a lot of Trump rallies. Backpacks and bags, bicycles, firearms, any type of weapon, or any other item determined to be a potential safety hazard, like a rangefinder would be one. At 5:10, Crooks is first observed by one of the snipers, AGR Sniper 1, at the building. 5:10, President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. 5:28, AGR Sniper 1 takes a picture of a bicycle and 2 bags. Those belong to Crooks. 5:32, AGR Sniper 1 spots Crooks looking at his phone and using a rangefinder. 5:55, Butler ESU Command confirms receipt of photos and states they have been relayed on. 6:05 p.m., AGR Sniper 1 later communicates that Crooks is seen moving northeast in direction of Sheetz and that Crooks has a backpack. 2 minutes before the shooting, while President Trump has been allowed to take the stage, people see Crooks laying on his stomach in a sniper position on the roof, and they're yelling he has a gun, and they are trying to alert law enforcement and Secret Service. Why was Crooks not shot by the snipers? Why was he allowed to be there?
As soon as the individual was identified as a threat, they were...
No. What do you consider to be a threat? A man with a gun laying in a sniper position, a man that had a backpack, a man that had a bicycle, a man that had a rangefinder. At what point is he determined a threat?
An individual with a backpack is not a threat. An individual with a rangefinder is not a threat.
What about a man laying on a building that has direct line of sight of President Trump with a gun that people are screaming and pointing out? Is that a threat, Ms. Cheadle?
Once that individual was identified, they were neutralized.
No, they were neutralized. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheadle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but
You knew that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheadle? Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible...
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been...
Yes or no? You didn't want to answer the question.
committee.
We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political, yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
without objection to ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th? Yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman, I want to...
Mr. Hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. The answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So, was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to
Training,
examine.
execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All right. How many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks?
Are refusing to answer questions that we now know that you have the information for. You are saying that you are wanting to answer questions that the Secret Service has information to. Well, ma'am, you are the Secret Service. You are the director. You have said that you are the best for the job. So I'm going to ask you some questions now knowing that you do have answers from the FBI, whom you have been passing the buck to this entire day. And I'll start with something that, maybe the FBI doesn't know because it has to deal with you personally. You said you spoke with President Trump after the assassination attempt. And I want to know, did you apologize to him directly for nearly having President Trump killed?
Yes, I did.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you recognize that this was your failure. Now, since the assassination attempt, you are under oath, reminding you. Have you communicated with anyone at the White House on an encrypted messaging app like Signal? Yes or no?
No, I have not.
Are you willing to surrender your personal phone for analysis?
If I am required to do so.
Okay. I will look into making that request because I would like to see your personal phone to see if you're communicating over encrypted messaging apps. Have you ever turned down enhanced security requests from Donald Trump's detail, his special agent in charge, Sean Curran? Have you ever turned that down?
No, I have not.
Have there been, has your team, has the Secret Service? Maybe not you personally.
I believe, as I mentioned earlier, there are times when requests are made for
and you
assets,
have denied them. They have been denied.
And a denial doesn't
Has the Trump campaign made requests for additional assets that have been denied?
Denial doesn't mean vulnerability.
Have there been additional requests for enhanced security at Mar-a-Lago?
We have made a number of enhancements to.
You confirmed that there were bomb-sniffing dogs that were provided. You failed to confirm if there were aerial security surveillance assets that were provided. So yes or no, was that provided?
At the rally?
At the rally, yes, ma'am.
We had Overwatch provided at the rally.
You've confirmed that the assassin was identified as suspicious 57 minutes prior to the shooting. Was the suspicious individual ever approached by an agent? Was any contact ever made with him?
Not to my knowledge.
Is that the standard protocol for someone who is identified as suspicious?
The protocol would be to locate the individual and
you said that he was located 2 to 5 times approximately?
No, I said that the information was passed potentially somewhere between 2 to 5
And he was
times.
never located by an agent?
To my knowledge, that individual was not located by an agent.
We have dozens of rally goers who have identified him and not one agent on the ground. There are many, many, many agents on the ground. Local law enforcement, Secret Service. No one was able to identify him.
It has been 10 days since an assassination attempt on a former president of the United States, regardless of party. There need to be answers. Again, this party, this committee, this is not a moment of theater. We have to make policy decisions and we have to make them now. We do. And that may be and that may require legislation. That may require policy that we must pass in the immediate term. And without that, we are flying blind.
Announced she'd be stepping down one day after being grilled by a congressional committee.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of today. You're just being completely dishonest.
You almost lost the current or the past president. I don't know how that doesn't rise to the utmost of your attention and you're all in on it.
Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin, who was hesitant to call for a resignation in the hours after the attempted assassination, says the past weekend Monday's hearing made it clear Cheadle should not hold the job.
The fact that she was that weak of a leader would tell you that she needed to leave prior to this event taking place.
The investigation into the security failure in Butler, Pennsylvania remains ongoing. Lamb says while lawmakers now may want to see more changes within the agency, it's important things aren't rushed.
We need to make sure the changes that occur in the Secret Service are prudent, wise, and make the agency better.
Everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheadle? Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump? Ms. Cheadle? Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Take a look what happened. Take a look what happened. Take a look what happened. Take a look what happened.
Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
How did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Absolutely not.
How did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation? Conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely.
Order, Ms. Cheadle?
Three shots came from that window, Clay. And 5 came from a nearby tree because the crack thump is different. I got a .22 on the first 3 shots. I got a .212 on the other 5. Look at the window, Clay. Who's that? Who's that, Clay? Why do I see muzzle flash in a window in the American Glass building, Clay? At the same time, I hear silenced gunfire. What is that, Clay? That is an assassin, my friend, and the problem is that assassin is in a Secret Service uniform. And then the lady says they shot the guy on the water tower. Well, they shot the guy on the water tower? What the hell? Holy moly! You telling me they had some lunatic up in the water? Whoa, look at the line of sight to backstage from up there. Not to the podium, but to backstage. And the reason is there's a jumbotron between the podium and the stage. But the backstage shot and the shots at the snipers are clear from here. You got a nice shot to take the snipers out. You got a nice shot to take the president out as he's going to the car. As he's waving to everybody. Fight, fight, fight. They're still shooting.
Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
The local officers went up to that roof and started taking pictures of the dead body, of the shooter's body. So suddenly a guy in a gray suit walks up the ladder and goes up to the roof. And this guy in the gray suit, who didn't appear to have credentials, everybody assumed he was the Secret Service. So he tells one of the local law enforcement, send those pictures to this cell phone. And he gives him a number. And everybody assumed, well, that must be Secret Service. It turns out it wasn't Secret Service. So we're going to tell you exactly who that person was and what agency the local enforcement sent the pictures to. Ron Johnson has it all in his preliminary report, and it's pretty incredible. So we're digging deep into this investigation of that massive security failure that occurred when a shooter was able to get 7 shots out and, of course, grazing President Trump's ear and killing Corey Compertor, which we all pray for his family right now. So we're talking about that this morning. We will also talk with...
Why do you think that a lot of Americans are like, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, guys? How could this many things have gone wrong, right? Like the things I pointed out, a 20-year-old kid, got 150 yards of the President of the United States with an AR-15, flew a drone to conduct site surveillance, was spotted with a rangefinder ranging targets, then lost, had advanced explosive devices on him with no military training. Nobody was placed in the most obvious spot to conduct counter-sniper operations. I was a sniper in the SEAL teams, Colonel. As soon as I got out of the SUV and I saw that that water tower, I was like, that's exactly where I'd be. Put me right there. It's obvious. After partisan attempts to bankrupt him, imprison him for 750 years, and countless depictions as a modern-day Hitler, are you surprised, sir, that a lot of Americans are like, maybe there's more to this story?
Something that said, take a look at what happened. Take a look at what happened. Take a look at what happened. That said, take a look at what happened. Really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
It's really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were moved?
I don't know.
Are we good to move? We're clear! We're clear! We're clear! Let me get my shit. Hold that in your head, it's bloody. So we gotta move to the car. Let me get my shit. Okay, let's do it down. Watch out. Wait.
No, that was him.
20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Meta said that the picture wasn't altered. At first they said it was altered, and then they said, no, it was a bug, it was a mistake.
Mark Zuckerberg,
so my point is these companies would not allow any information out about what happened.
So Mark Zuckerberg called me. First of all, he called me a few times. He called me after the event, and he said that was really amazing. It was very brave, and and he actually announced he's not going to support a Democrat because he can't, because he respected me for what I did that day. I think what I did maybe was to me, it was a normal response. But I was called by Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, the day before, on this same subject, and he actually apologized. He said they made a mistake, et cetera, and they're correcting the mistake. Google, nobody called from Google.
I want to talk about the 2024 presidential election.
Okay.
Facebook has been a flashpoint in many elections around the world, and you personally have been called out, most recently by former President Trump. This is a big election. What do you think is at stake?
Well, I mean, look, it's obviously a very important and it'll be a historic election. You know, I feel like I'm best positioned maybe to talk about what our role will be in it and what we're going to do. And look, I mean, the main thing that I hear from people is that they actually want to see less political content on our services because they come to our services to connect with people. So, you know, that's what we're going to do, where we give people control over this, but we're generally trying to recommend less political content. So I think you're going to see our services play less of a role in this election than they have in the past. And personally, I'm also planning on not playing a significant role in the election. You know, I've done some stuff personally in the past. I'm not planning on doing that this time. And that includes, you know, not endorsing either of the candidates. Now, look, I mean, there's obviously a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. I mean, the historic events over over the weekend. And I mean, on a personal note, it's, you know, I mean, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, and my friend saw blood coming out of his head.
Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. There he is.
Oh, there he is. There he is. There he is.
Deep in their bones, they'll run into smoke when the fire is fierce. Oh, pick yourself up, guys.
They're not coming after me. They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. I'm just standing. I will always stand in their way.
Rachel, it's an extraordinary moment in American history. This is the first time we have seen a sitting president bow out of re-election since Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1968. And it comes, unlike Johnson's move, which happened in January of that year, it comes after he has already gone through a primary process, after he has already effectively won the Democratic nomination, which now raises the huge questions, as you allude to, of what happens next.
We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I made my views known. I'd like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country.
Vice President Kamala Harris has now earned enough delegate votes to become the Democratic nominee for president. So it is officially official ahead of the convention. There will be, of course, all of the fanfare, but this is it. This is the real count.
As your future president, I know we are up to this fight. And when we fight, everyone will say in unison, we win. So thank you, everyone. Please take care, and I can't wait to see you in Chicago. And thank you.
Yeah, this is a kind of a new thing where you don't have the vote, you know. Chuck Schumer called it grassroots, but it doesn't seem like the typical, democracy kind of thing.
Well, we sat down at a big table, right next to Nancy's cauldron, and we all decided, we have to just make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get elected, and we're going to do everything we can to stop it from happening. Right. All right? It doesn't,
Right.
The rules don't matter. The law doesn't matter at this point. That's the bottom line here. Everything we can. The people will thank us at the end of the day. Democracy, schmarocracy.
Okay. And only when they cleared that vet did we give them DACA status. And now we're talking about taking it away. It is morally wrong. And when we all sing happy tunes and sing Merry Christmas and wish each other Merry Christmas, these children are not going to have a Merry Christmas. How dare we speak Merry Christmas? How dare we? They will not have a Merry Christmas. They don't know if they will be here in a matter of days, weeks, and months. Since September 5th, over 12,000 have lost their status. Each day, and 122 lose their status each week. 851 lose their status. Each day matters.
One of the decisions he made, President Biden wants Vice President Harris to be the standard bearer of the party now. Does she still want to get rid of ICE?
You have seen what this administration has been able to do in the past 3.5 years, and they did that with the vice president as a partner in that. And Republicans got in the way. The president went around Republicans and was able to get thousands of personnel at the border. And now we are seeing a 50% drop at the border. And that's because of what this president has done.
As a partner, though, she's been in charge of root causes of migration for years. She has never spoken to the Border Patrol Chief, Jason Owens, or the Border Patrol Chief before him, Raul Ortiz. What should that tell us about her leadership style?
She was supposed to be doing root causes, dealing with diplomacy. 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 That's what her job was supposed to be. Diplomatic. That's the job. And I understand that you're asking these questions, but we should also look at congressional Republicans who got in the way, literally got in the way of everything that this president was trying to do to deal with the border. They got in the way. They would say one thing and then they would change their mind. They would say, we want Border Patrol, we want, we want a deal on what's happening at the border, and then they would walk away from it. And they did it because of what the former president said. You guys reported that. That's not coming from me. Some of your colleagues reported that the former president said, let's not move forward with this proposal because it's going to help Joe Biden. I mean, that's also the reality. You got to talk about both sides here.
So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Put up barriers and shut down traffic on the city's international bridge, all in an effort to prevent the mass entry. Meanwhile, the search continues for 3 missing American women who entered Mexico 3 weeks ago. Their disappearance comes in the wake of the kidnapping of 4 other Americans, 2 of whom were killed by the Mexican drug cartel.
The group is traveling to the border for protests of the federal handling of the crisis.
I think this is...
Including Eagle Pass, dropped significantly from December to January, and a majority of crossings are now happening in Arizona and California, not Texas. In addition to Texas's hardened response, Mexico has increased its enforcement. Crossings do typically slow in colder months. Meanwhile, the problems caused by the border crisis continue to play out. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials announced an operation that rounded up non-U.S. citizens in 25 major cities who had been accused of serious crimes. Officials also confirmed a Daily Caller report that an al-Shabaab terrorist was released into the U.S. after crossing illegally and not caught for about a year.
Customs and Border Patrol sources say that they were nearly 1,100 illegal crossings in the San Diego sector on Sunday, 97 Chinese nationals and 91 Turkish nationals. The House Homeland Security Committee expects to mark up articles of impeachment against DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas today.
Back onto the streets again without bail. All of them young men, ages 19 to 24. One of them has also been accused of punching and biting a worker at Nordstrom Rack who caught this illegal shoplifting.
This week, a group of self-proclaimed patriots is planning a peaceful rally in what organizers are calling the Take Our Border Back convoy. According to its website, the convoy have called themselves God's Army and are calling on active and retired law enforcement, military, veterans, elected officials, and other law-abiding, freedom-loving Americans.
The chart on the right shows when Biden came into office, you had historic lows the instant he was sworn in. The numbers skyrocketed. It went from the lowest rate in 45 years to today, the highest rate in the history of our nation. This is deliberate. Now today, President Biden and the Democrats have a press conference. And here's what they're announcing. He could have stopped this every single day of his presidency. When he signs this executive order, the only question anyone should ask is, why didn't you do this in 2021? Why didn't you do this in 2022? Why didn't you do this in 2023? Why didn't you do this last month or the month before or the month before? How many dead bodies is enough?
As the border crisis escalates, President Biden is putting the vice president in charge.
When she speaks for me, doesn't have to check with me. She knows what she's doing.
The work will not be easy, but it is important work.
The president blames former President Trump for the mess, which has led to 16,000 children in U.S. border custody. But Trump ally Lindsey Graham says the Biden administration has lost control.
This is not Trump's fault. That's a bunch of BS. This is policy choices that were ill-conceived that have blown up in Biden administration's face.
Just released Border Patrol video shot last week reveals cramped conditions. This facility, meant to hold 250 people, now bursting with close to 4,000. Children seen sleeping on the floor under foil blankets. And now, the Hill reporting 300 children in custody with COVID who must be isolated. On Wednesday, members of Congress toured a new facility for unaccompanied teens. On Friday, 18 senators will visit the Rio Grande Valley to see for themselves what's happening. A Trump public health order allows the U.S. to quickly return adults and families stopped at the border. But Axios reports that Homeland Security numbers show officials sent back fewer than 15% of families last week.
So these are people literally crossing the border illegally as adults that are being released into the country, or that are 17 years old that they're actually transitioning to another relative that's in the country also illegally and saying show up for a court hearing 2 years from now, which obviously most of those folks don't show up for the hearings.
Senator Graham said Wednesday that cartels are taking advantage of U.S. asylum policies, promising the very poor and desperate they'll have no problem qualifying. Graham's new bill would force them to apply for asylum in their home countries.
The asylum system is being gamed. The Secure and Protect Act will stop this.
In recent weeks, the administration has made more than 10,000 beds available near the border, with plans to open new facilities, including military bases in Texas, to house teenagers.
You want to understand the consequences? Take a look at the 2 police officers in New York who were shot this week by an illegal alien that Joe Biden and the Democrats released. The assailant, Bernardo Raul Castro Mata. It's a name really out of Charles Dickens. Mata is Spanish for he kills. His middle name is a communist murdering dictator. And what happened? He came illegally from Venezuela. He came to John and my home state of Texas. He came to Eagle Pass. We had him apprehended. And what did he do? He did what Joe Biden and the Democrats have done for 3.5 years. He let him go. Went to New York City and shot 2 New York cops this week. That's happening every single week. We have not had a week go by when someone is not shot, someone is not murdered, a child is not raped by an illegal immigrant released by Joe Biden and the Democrats.
I had no idea that this whole thing that we're up to was based on black women for Harris, right? And so it kind of morphed into white men, white dudes for Harris. And I'm excited, man. I think, the fact that Joe has passed the baton so beautifully, and Kamala is just so certainly our girl, I can see her being president. I'm so excited. A woman president, man, how exciting.
The way to turn themselves in to U.S. Border Patrol officers. Most say they will ask the United States government for asylum.
In my country in Africa, things are not going well.
Many days, but this right here that you're looking at, this was the scene yesterday in Lukeville.
Look at all those people just walking across. It still blows my mind every time I see it.
And the fact that they're not just from south of the border here in Arizona, they're from all over the world. Tens of thousands of migrants have entered through the crossing over the past several weeks. Border Patrol agents in the Tucson sector, they are simply overwhelmed. Fox is reporting that among yesterday's crowd in Lukeville were 2 men from Afghanistan. Both were considered special interest and will undergo more federal vetting. Border crossing numbers this month could reach 300.
Expanding legal pathways for migrants, but says it needs more funding from Congress to do so. Today's meeting comes as migrant encounters at the southern border reach unprecedented levels, with December on track to break the monthly record.
With DPS and are currently still there. The mayor of Nogales and the Cochise County Sheriff share what they are seeing at the border.
understand what is going on here. This is election year politics. And by the way, we've seen this game before. Apparently the Democrats have one playbook, which is create a crisis, and then a couple of months before the election, do something very mild to address the crisis and say, see, problem solved. We saw this with gas prices. Right before the last election, gas prices had doubled. People were hurting. And what did he do? Right before the election, he releases oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Gas prices fell a little bit. And they victory lap that they've reduced gas prices a tiny bit from the massive historic highs they've had. We also saw this on student loans. Last election, right before the election, what does Joe Biden do? He says, I'm giving away $1 trillion to young people. By the way, young people, come vote for Democrats now.
Vice President Harris was given the task of finding out the root causes of immigration from the Northern Triangle countries, which are Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. Now, her campaign says she was never in charge of border security, but then others say she also supported policies, though, that were set forth by the Biden administration. What are you hearing from border agents, though, with the possibility she could be in charge of the border?
Jan, I think that clip you showed says it all. I mean, the Border Patrol agents watch and hear the same things we do, and that's why they're demoralized, because they know under Vice President Harris, the same policies that led to the worst border security disaster in our lifetime will continue, that they will not be able to do the job to secure, defend, and protect our borders that they signed up for. And the American people aren't stupid. They know that as Vice President, you can't separate yourself from an administration's policies when it suits you, especially when it comes to the border, because Vice President Harris has been a vocal defender and supporter of this administration's open border policies since day one. And I tell you, Jan, the fact that the media is trying so hard to distance herself from the title of border czar because they don't want to, put the chaos and lawlessness of the policies on her. And the last thing that I would say is even though, let's take base case scenario, that she was only relegated to stem the flow of illegal immigration from the Northern Triangle countries in Mexico, well, the past 3.5 years, we've had over 5 million encounters from those 4 countries alone. So no matter what you want to call her or what she was responsible for, it's been a colossal failure.
And when she was then senator back in 2018, she grilled former acting ICE director Ronald Vitello. He was a Trump nominee. Now, critics say she's vilified the agency. The New York Post has a story this morning reporting her statement likened ICE agents to the KKK, asking him if he was aware there was a perception of similarities between the agency and the Klan. So is there a fear that she would try to get rid of ICE?
Yes, she said she wants to get rid of ICE, just like she wants to defund law enforcement throughout this nation. Look, Jen, she's also said that the United States Border Patrol Horse Unit was akin to modern-day slavery. I mean, these are vile, hate-filled comments. They are reckless and irresponsible. But just as importantly, I think they give us a window into fundamentally how she looks at our nation's sovereignty, the rule of law, and quite frankly, the separation of powers enumerated under the Constitution. I think it shows also that because she started these comments way back when she was senator, that she's not an innocent bystander in these open border policies. She's been an active contributor throughout the past 3.5 years. And I think under her presidency, if that would happen, she's going to be more liberal than Biden with respect to her open border policies.
Speaking of senators, what we do know is that Senator Elizabeth Warren told CNN's State of the Union Sunday that we needed to create a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million illegal immigrants in the country, and that this needed to be part of comprehensive immigration reform. And she said Vice President Kamala Harris is the one to get it done with Congress because Biden couldn't do it. The question is, will that be the platform Harris chooses, do you think? And is that what the American people want?
To have more resources in the states and cities that are supporting migrants. And I believe we need to create a pathway to citizenship. All of that is part of what we need to do for comprehensive immigration reform. Kamala Harris will work with Congress and get that done.
Is they're going to issue an executive order that normalizes illegal immigration at 4,000 people a day. 4,000 people a day is 1.5 million a year. And understand on this chart, I'm actually going to pull this chart over here because what they're doing is unusually cynical. He came in here, the numbers skyrocketed here. 4,000 a day is 120,000. So we're right here. He's proposing to lower it to right here. To lower it just a bit. And then to play the same game he played on gas prices, say, look at the great victory. And by the way, If, God forbid, Joe Biden is reelected, the number will go from 120 back up to here, because this is what they want. The Democrats want that criminal invasion. And the police officers being shot, the young women being murdered, the children being raped, they're unwilling to stand up and protect them. It's immoral, it's wrong, and what the White House is doing today is they're just playing a political game.
Time to pass the torch.
The former VP put on the defensive.
I'm still holding on to that torch.
A shouting match erupting on stage.
It's part of Joe's generation.
And then Senator Kamala Harris stepped in.
America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yes.
It was clear the former California Attorney General came ready to play. In the most dramatic moment of the night, she called out Biden's record on race, taking him to task for touting his ability to get things done, even with segregationist senators.
I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country.
Mischaracterization my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true.
Piling on, she took on Biden's opposition in the 70s to federally ordered busing in order to integrate public schools. And she made it personal.
And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Moments later, her campaign tweeting out this photo of a young Harris. Biden forced to clarify.
Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed. Your city council made that decision. It was a local decision.
Rattling off his accomplishments advocating for civil rights before stepping back as the clock ran down.
I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Now the ever weak, frail, forgetful Joe, while he continues to try and erase his past positions, let's see, on fracking, telling a small group of supporters in Pennsylvania, and I mean small, teensy-weensy little group, that he is not going to ban it. The only problem is, Joe, well, we have you and we have your running mate on tape saying the exact opposite. And you said it during this campaign trial. That's the real Joe Biden in my view. I don't trust you, but we'll let our viewers decide.
I am not banning fracking, period. But kiddo, I want you to just take a look, okay? You don't have to agree, but I want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel, and I am not going to cooperate with it, okay? No new fracking.
Would there be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for either one of those.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So now, who do you think Biden and Harris are beholden to? The hardworking people of Pennsylvania, Ohio, let's see, Oklahoma, Texas, or the new radical extreme socialist left? Joe actually lied during the debate. I don't have the Bernie Biden manifesto. Yeah, you do, all 110 pages of it. Here with reaction, author of the New York Times bestseller, Trump and the American Future.
So this new surge we're dealing with now started with the last administration, but it's our responsibility to deal with it humanely and to stop what's happening. And so this increase has been consequential. But the vice president's agreed, among the multiple other things that have her leading, and I appreciate it, agreed to lead our diplomatic effort and work with those nations to accept the returnees and enhance migration enforcement at their borders. We're already talking with Mexico about that. She's already done that. We're going to be dealing with a full team now that we have to be able to deal with the problem here at home, but also to deal with it now in terms of in country. And I can think of nobody who's better qualified to do this than this is a woman who ran the second largest Attorney General's office in America after the United States Attorney General in the state of California, and has done a great deal of promoting human rights, but also fighting organized crime in the process. So,
Madeline, good to see you. We'll start with you. You know, she's been vice president for almost 4 years. Obama was president for 8 years as a black man. So is playing the race card here really a smart strategy?
You know, thank you so much, Laura, for having me once again on your show. It is absolutely the most silliest thing that they could possibly do, because most African Americans know that the illegals' benefit card is worth more than our worthless black card. So why would we care about who Kamala Harris is, about her race or her gender? We care about the policies that she has pushed with Joe Biden for the past 3.5 years. We are struggling. We can't even make ends meet. You talked about retirement earlier. I have to work till I'm 70 years old in order to get my full retirement. So, you know, no, Black America is not supporting Kamala Harris. All right. Her color has nothing to do with the failed policies that she has championed and stood on for 3.5 years.
Now, people have called Kamala the DEI candidate, but Democrats, they don't like that.
Whenever you hear DEI, I want you to think about the N-word. I want you to think about racial slurs. That's what they actually mean.
Latina. When you hear DEI, think of the N-word? That's where they are. That's it.
Well, you know, Laura, thank you for having me on. I just want to say this. The Democrats are full of crap. And I think that they know that the American people can see through the crap that they're pushing and circulating out there to the black community. If anything, the Democrats, they're the ones who are sowing division in the community, in this country. They're not about uniting everyone together. They're about themselves. They're about power. They're about division. They have their own agenda in place. And this thing has been in the works for years. It's just that now it's coming to light and people are starting to wake up. They're opening up their eyes. And I'm going to tell you something. The black community, we will not support her. Nope. You know, they can try to race bait us. Nope. They can try to push the gender agenda in our community.
And speaking of that, Latina, speaking of that, I got a place because they're starting this pressure campaign for any black person or minority who is not considering voting for Kamala.
You're going to look real crazy being on the other side of that line, particularly as a person of color, but really as anyone who claims to have any connection to the culture. You're going to look real weird and real lonely on that side.
All right, one line from each of you. Madeline, you're going to look really weird, Madeline, if you don't support her.
You know, I'm not paying her no mind. You know, I'm not supporting Kamala Harris because I don't believe in the continued genocide of black babies in the womb through abortion, where she's pushing tooth and nail, even to the 3rd trimester. You know, I don't believe in that, and I don't support that, and I don't believe that most of the, especially black women in the black community, support that.
Latina, you're weird if you don't support Kamala Harris. You're weird.
Well, you know, I think, you know, that's a weird statement coming from, you know, Miss Reed. I don't think she's all there mentally. God help her.
We were going to have a shelter at this particular location. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could go ahead and if we're tuning in to do so.
Auntie, I work for the Chicago Park District for the North Region, and I'm here to support the staff for Amundsen Park and the surrounding parks.
I'm the commander of the 25th District.
Commissioner Torres.
My name is John Robertson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the City of Chicago.
First, start off by saying thank everyone for coming out. This, in my opinion, has been one of the most difficult situations that we've had in the city of Chicago. This past Friday, and so that I could chronologically let you know as far as what I have found out. This past Friday, I spoke to the mayor's office, the mayor's deputy mayor, or the deputy chief of staff, who informed me Friday morning that we were going to have a shelter at this particular location.
It's temporary. They won't be here forever. And if something happens, we have Chicago Police Department. We have resources that will uphold the law, you know?
To discuss the migrant encampment at 38th in California. I want to first start by stating that this is not a 15th Ward issue. This is a 12th Ward issue. But this is a Brighton Park issue. And I'm a resident of Brighton Park, as are all of you. Many of you here, and many of you who are not here, called my office following the Kelly High School meeting, stating that you did not feel you had the opportunity to have your voice heard. The purpose for tonight is to give you an opportunity to speak publicly, for the record, for the media, to share your thoughts and concerns about what is being proposed, about what has been agreed to and signed for 38th in California. We know that it was announced last week while a virtual meeting was going on that the contract creating the migrant base camp had been signed by the mayor a week prior. $90,000 a month in rent will be given for that location to house nearly 2,000 migrants at 38th in California.
And that's why they should pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act.
This is really a moment in America.
Yeah.
Racial tensions, as you just mentioned, they are really palpable. Your experience, your life experience, is different from every one of your predecessors.
Mm-hmm.
How is that bringing itself to bear right here in the White House?
Well, I think that, first of all, you'll recall that when Joe Biden asked me to join him on the ticket, he did so with a sense of intentionality, of purpose, knowing that he and I may have very different life experiences, but we also have the same values and operate from the same principles. But it was something that I know he was very intentional about in terms of asking me to run with him and to serve with him, which is that I will bring a perspective that will contribute to the overall decisions that we make. He and I are in almost every meeting together, have made almost every decision together. Listen, I carry a great weight of responsibility. Knowing that there are so many people, again, the generations of women who fought for and imagined there would be a woman vice president or a woman on the ticket. And I think of that all the time in terms of the responsibility I have. I carry a great sense of responsibility for all of the young girls and boys of color, those who identify in some way because maybe no one expected something of them, but they expect a lot of themselves, to do well and to do right and to do good. Great sense of responsibility, if not of the seriousness of the responsibility to be in this position and be a voice for those who have not traditionally been in the room.
President Biden tasked you with leading diplomatic efforts to work with Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries to address the root causes of migration. How do you define success in this role?
It's a great question.
Very quickly, what do you think about Kamala Harris? She's supposed to be out front on these issues. She has not been. What's your takeaway from that?
Well, interestingly, they released a readout this week between her and a member of the cabinet, Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, and they talked about the incident of the Border Patrol on horseback who aggressively confronted the Haitian migrants. So it was an example of the White House showing she was connected to the issue in some way, but she has repeatedly said that she's focusing on the root causes of migration and that the border is a separate matter. What we are learning and seeing in real time is that you really can't separate the two.
Yeah, I really cannot. This has been a problem from the beginning of this administration.
Some within your own party are wondering if President Biden should even step aside. What do you say to that?
Listen, first of all, what we saw tonight is the president making a very clear contrast with Donald Trump on all of the issues that matter to the American people. Yes, there was a slow start, but it was a strong finish. And what became very clear through the course of the night is that Joe Biden is fighting on behalf of the American people, on substance, on policy, on performance. Joe Biden is extraordinarily strong.
But I'm sorry, on substance and policy and performance tonight, I mean, the president's performance tonight clearly was disappointing for his supporters. CNN is reporting Democratic lawmakers watching the debate were worried about the president's performance. One said it was a disaster. Another called it a train wreck.
Listen, people can debate on style points, but ultimately this election and who is the president of the United States has to be about substance. And the contrast is clear. Look at what happened during the course of the debate. Donald Trump lied over and over.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to condemn Vice President Kamala Harris for her failed and dangerous policies as Joe Biden's border czar that caused the most catastrophic border crisis in modern history. No matter what congressional district you go to, the number one issue facing Americans is Kamala Harris's open border crisis. And by every metric, Kamala Harris has failed to secure our borders, instead advancing far-left Democrats' failed open border policies and the needs of illegal immigrants over the safety of Americans. This resolution condemns Kamala Harris's role as Joe Biden's open border czar and affirms that the American people deserve elected officials who understand the gravity of the crisis at the border and who will work to secure the border. Now, Democrats will try to run from this record, but they cannot hide. Joe Biden's open border czar, Kamala Harris, and every elected Democrat is responsible for this border crisis, along with every other aspect of Joe Biden's failed and feckless record, which brought not only the border crisis, but skyrocketing Biden inflation, surging violent crimes, chaos, and weakness around the world. We all remember the widely publicized delegation that Vice President Kamala Harris conducted and led, saying, "Do not come, do not come." And millions of illegals poured into our country since then because of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's administration's unconstitutional, illegal executive actions, wiping away President Trump's effective border security policies, which created the most secure border in modern history. The American people know that. In fact, just last month, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection announced over 130,000 illegal immigrant encounters at our southern border in June. This is roughly 4,300 illegal encounters at our southern border a day, which is 4 times more than the definition of a crisis set by Obama's DHS Secretary Jay Johnson. So far this fiscal year, there have been 93 individuals whose names appear on the terrorist watch list who were stopped trying to enter the U.S. illegally between ports of entry at the southern border. That's over 500 since Kamala Harris was assigned the border czar role. And on our northern border, in the Swanton sector, which I represent, I have seen firsthand with the Border Patrol the disastrous consequences of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's administration's failed far-left open border agenda agenda, which caused a historic surge in illegal crossings, the likes of which we have never seen on our northern border before, including individuals on the terrorist watch list.
It was what we would call today a domestic terrorist group.
Why? Why would we call them domestic terrorist group?
Because they tried to use fear and force to change the political environment.
And what was the motivation for the use of fear and force?
It was based on race and ethnicity.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
Officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel.
The perception of ICE being the KKK?
Border czar Kamala threw open our borders and allowed 20 million illegal aliens to stampede into our country from all over the world.
But experts say Harris wasn't really a border czar at all.
No person who deliberately releases these kinds of savage criminals to prey on our youth and our people, not just youth. Elderly people, too, are tremendous targets, should ever be trusted with power. Again, she has no clue. She has no clue. She's evil. The one job Kamala had was the border. That's the only job, and it was the biggest disaster in all of border history.
The 10/7 Hamas terror attack on Israel. But didn't Kamala Harris and Biden say Biden's recent executive action would stop all this?
They did, but once again, they're lying to the American people. And we got to remember, under Trump in 4 years, we had 13. 13. So look, the terrorist organizations around the world know if you get to the border, you can cross the border, you'll be released. We'll fly you to the city of your choice. We'll put you in a free hotel room. We'll give you 3 meals a day. We'll give you free medical care. And wait for 90 days, you'll get work authorization. Who the hell wouldn't come? So look, what concerns me more about the ones they arrested is the 2 million gotaways. 2 million people paid the cartels more not to take advantage of all that free giveaway stuff. They paid more to get away. That just scared the hell out of everybody. It does me. We know there's sleeper cells in this country. We know terrorists have crossed the border in this administration. And look, luckily they caught the 8 a few weeks ago. Luckily the intelligence community got them on some chatter and some undercover lines. But we all know the intelligence community is not perfect. You know, they missed 9/11. They missed the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They're not perfect. Thank God they found this one, but are they going to find the next one?
You know, what you're saying is very concerning. We have half a dozen House Democrats voted for a House resolution condemning Kamala Harris's work as border czar. That included Democrat Henry Cuellar. I mean, she's backing off of the idea that she was overseeing and given the job of overseeing the border by Biden in March of 2021. Show the New York Times, ABC, CBS, NBC, the AP. She's running away from having any responsibility for that job as terrorists, criminals, murderers, rapists are caught crossing. And, you know, agents have little to no criminal or terror data overseas on who was crossing. So we've got illegal alien gangs terrorizing major cities like New York's with shootings, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, pickpocketing, scooter robbery, home invasion gangs. This is in New York City, now other cities as well, Tom.
You can't make this stuff up. And of course, Donald Trump and what they're doing to him is the most public abuse of the Department of Justice. And you're exactly right. They are doing the things that they are accusing Donald Trump of doing if he is elected as president again. And it's a pure distraction tactic. It is an attempt to be able to divert voters' views away from how they are abusing power and instead try to paint a picture of Donald Trump as some kind of crazy dictator. They say this, if he's elected, this will be the last election we ever have in America. All of these really insane comments that point to a picture that is not real, and it's not grounded in evidence or precedents for that matter. You don't have to guess about what kind of president he'll be because he was president for 4 years. And he did not do the kinds of things that the Biden-Harris administration have been doing from the very beginning when they took office. So the lawfare and the weaponization of the justice system against Donald Trump is the most prominent example of that abuse of power, the undermining of the rule of law. But as I share in my book, they are also targeting and going after everyday Americans who are their political opposition, whether they be peaceful pro-life protesters or people who are challenging the neocon warmongering foreign policy of the Biden-Harris administration, or those who are, most famously throughout the COVID epidemic, or the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, people who are speaking the truth or just merely questioning why is the government forcing us to do this? Why are they not willing to allow freedom of speech for different healthcare professionals who are challenging the government narrative on this thing? The level of censorship, the level of abuse of power and taking away our freedom even to go and worship with friends in Hawaii. We had churches that they wanted to go and gather on the beach, outside, in public, small groups of people for their church service, and we're told if you do that, you will get arrested.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last week I couldn't help but notice the stark differences in the plans that Democrats and Republicans laid out for America's future. During my town halls, Kansas demanded that we address our national debt and crushing inflation. They're shocked about the millions of illegal immigrants who have and continue to enter the country and the risks that they pose to the integrity of our elections. Our country is going down the wrong path and we need to fix it quickly. During our convention, President Trump and Republicans laid out our vision to make America wealthy again, safe again, strong again, and to make America great again.
Touching down in Houston for the third time, Vice President Kamala Harris campaigning for presidency. Governor Greg Abbott taking notice, sending her this letter ahead of her visit, highlighting what he calls a humanitarian crisis at the border. In the letter, Governor Greg Abbott said the Biden administration hasn't done enough on the border, writing, quotes, there are currently more than 18,000 immigrant children in the federal government's custody, adding it remains unclear the extent to which the administration is investigating how these children arrived here. Abbott ends his letter by asking the administration to, quote, allow DPS personnel access to federally run facilities that are housing unaccompanied minors.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. Yes, we will. So let's get...
We are all in this together, and your vote is your power. So please make sure your voice is heard this November and register to vote at vote.gov.
Can I get an amen?
Amen! Now on with the show.
And remember, you better vote.
The issue Donald Trump is strongest and has the most credibility on is border security. Now you've got Kamala Harris saying, we wanted more CBP officers. We wanted to fight fentanyl. That is actually true. They were willing to support that bill, and Donald Trump decided not to. How Republicans stepped in it so bad with that is just beyond me.
There's no possible way Democrats could possibly believe they're going to fight to even a draw on the issue of immigration. I hope they run all their ads on immigration, because it will remind the American people every time they turn on their television sets what a complete and utter failure this has all been. I mean, if they were so proud of their record, why is she working so hard to erase all evidence from the internet that she was in fact the border czar?
It's really hard to say. It's a dangerous crisis and an existential risk to the public and to national security. But you have to wait till I'm in office in January. Like, Godspeed in the time being.
That's in the summer of 2020, when there were protests across the country after a police officer murdered George Floyd, many progressives and liberals were talking about defunding police departments nationwide. One local radio show asked then-Senator Kamala Harris where she stood on the defund the police movement. Take a listen to this.
Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. And when you have many cities that have 1/3 of their entire city budget focused on policing, we know that is not the smart way and the best way or the right way to achieve safety. This whole movement is about rightly saying, we need to take a look at these budgets and figure out whether it reflects the right priorities. For too long, the status quo thinking has been, you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong.
Now, in another interview that same week, Harris praised Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti for removing $150 million from the police budget and investing that money in social services. Listen to this.
That's a legitimate conversation, and it requires a really critical evaluation. I applaud Eric Garcetti for doing what he's done.
Now, some important context here is that polling showed that reducing police budgets was never really popular, even in 2020. A Pew Research poll found that year that just 25% of adults supported reducing police budgets that year, and by 2021, that support had decreased to just 15%. But it is also important to note that the Biden administration, which of course included Vice President Harris, passed the American Rescue Plan, and that did put billions of dollars to cities to boost their budget.
Nobody cares about the fact that we've got a bunch of young black and brown men in prison. That argument is not working. What I suggest we do as African Americans is own this issue in law enforcement and then define it in the way that works for us, because it is a myth to say that African Americans don't want law enforcement. We do. We want our grandmothers to be able to walk to church and be safe. We want our babies to be able to walk to the park and be safe. What we don't want is racial profiling. What we don't want is excessive force. That's right. What we don't want is to have our civil liberties and civil rights be stripped. But we do want law enforcement. So let's define it in the way that works for us by saying, I want community policing. I want a police department that works in my neighborhood and in my community that reflects the mores and the culture and respects my grandmother, again, when they walk in to talk to her. I want a system of accountability in the criminal justice system that says law enforcement needs to own crime prevention as much as it talks about long sentences.
What we're going to cook today is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because you are Indian.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, you know Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like our thing we're so excited about to have you running for president.
Yeah.
So we're both Indian,
Yes.
but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. You look like the entire one half of my family.
Okay, thank you.
You do.
I've been telling people
You
we're
do.
related already,
Yeah.
so this is perfect. It's basically true. And so were you raised eating South Indian food?
It's clear that the majority leader and our Democratic colleagues don't like the Constitution. They don't like the separation of powers. They don't like the independence of the judiciary, which is really the gold standard for courts worldwide based on the rule of law. Established a political coup and replacing the sitting president with the vice president without going through the democratic process of actually holding elections. He's feeling his oats and perhaps cannot restrain himself. But it's clear that our Democratic colleagues don't like the Constitution and they want to change it. But they know they can't do that because there's not the support across the country or in Congress to do that. So he uses this as a political cudgel in the run-up to the election. It's irresponsible, and Unfortunately, I think it reflects the desperation with which the majority leader views this upcoming election on November the 5th. Does a potential Harris administration look like? Does it mean more of the same when it comes to the border and immigration policies? Would it signal a new direction? And if so, what would that direction be? Well, the truth is, we already know the answers to those questions. We don't have to wonder about Vice President Harris's policies because she has played a starring role in the current Biden border crisis. These are, after all, Biden-Harris policies. Just a couple of months into President Biden's presidency, illegal border crossings surged as a direct result of the policies that he and Vice President Harris implemented starting the first day in office, mainly by dismantling, piece by piece, the effective policies of the Trump administration.
I have more people supporting me in the black community that have announced for me because they know me. They know who I am. 3 former chairs of the Black Caucus, the only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate, a whole range of people.
No,
my point is
that's not true. The other one is here.
I said the first. I said the first African-American elected.
But the left wants to excuse illegal immigration. They want to excuse the cartels abusing these children, taking these children and sexually abusing them, physically abusing them, mentally abusing them. You know, they want to excuse this, and they continue by policy. They continue to perpetuate this situation, and it's gaining cartels ground, and it's making them billions of dollars every year off of human misery.
In the early weeks of this administration, we have seen an unprecedented series of executive actions that have hit our immigrant and religious communities like a cold front, striking a chilling fear in the hearts of millions of good, hardworking people, all by executive fiat. By fiat, we have seen the president stick taxpayers with a bill for a multi-billion-dollar border wall without regard to the role of the United States Congress under Article 1 of the Constitution. By fiat, we've seen a president mandate the detention of immigrants, both documented and undocumented, creating a dragnet that could ensnare 8 million people. By fiat, the president has ordered the creation of what essentially will be a 15,000-member deportation force. By fiat, he wants to take away state and local authority by making local police officers act as federal immigration officials. By fiat, the president wants to slam the gates of freedom by instituting a Muslim ban, a ban which was carelessly written as it has been incompetently enforced.
Donald Trump does not care about border security. He only cares about himself. And when I am president, I will work to actually solve the problem.
A new report finds the Biden-Harris administration has supercharged migration from Latin American countries with a program that has granted refugee status to more than 20,000 people from 7 different Latin American countries in just 1 year. The Center for Immigration Studies says many of these people coming to the United States would normally be classified as economic migrants and not refugees who are fleeing potential persecution. Joining me now is Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles. He has introduced an impeachment article against Harris over her role as border czar. Congressman, good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us about this impeachment article.
Well, it's important that we lay out the facts when it comes to immigration and the Harris-Biden lawless border. They've allowed millions of people to come into this country. They've allowed crime to sweep the nation, fentanyl to sweep the nation. You have 12, 13, 14-year-old girls that are targets of sexual predators from Central and South America. It is unconscionable for her to talk about the idea or float the idea that she's serious about border security when, as border czar, she's allowed our nation nation to be invaded.
Well, I mean, former President Trump has talked so much about this, and yet Kamala Harris comes out in that rally and you know, talks to people and says Trump doesn't care about immigration or the border. Do you think this is resonating, given the fact that this has been Trump's pretty much priority since he came down that elevator in 2015? Escalator, rather?
Well, this is her biggest liability. Every small town in America is a border town. Every small town in America is experiencing fentanyl crisis, increased crime. And so when you have mayors of Dallas, blue mayors, Democrat mayors of Dallas and Chicago and New York crying for help, please, please secure the border, and then yet the Harris-Biden administration is doing nothing about it. We should hold her accountable. And what you also have to note, and what you're seeing right before our eyes, is this corporate woke media is reinventing Kamala Harris. They're rewriting history, talking about how she wasn't the border czar, so somehow she's tough on the border or tough on crime, and yet when she was a U.S. senator, she was horrible for the middle class. She was horrible for crime. She is not deserving of being president of the United States. I believe we should impeach her. I believe we should lay out the facts before the American people, before the woke media, again, reinvents her right before our eyes.
Jonathan,
107,622 American lives were lost from fentanyl poisoning and methamphetamine poisoning. So starting in June, we invited families who'd lost loved ones to fentanyl poisoning. We invited them to come to DEA headquarters. And before they came, we asked if they wanted to share photographs of the loved ones that they'd lost with us. We expected to get, 10, 20 photographs. And I think the first week we got maybe 30 or 40 pictures. Today, we now have more than 4,000 photos on our wall, and every single day we're getting hundreds more. And so it's become a memorial, a place to honor the lives lost. But when you look at the wall, you see 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, people of all ages, and we now have almost 1,000 more that we're about to put up.
The extent to which the president has said Vice President Harris is in charge of the border. Vice President Harris said she was not in charge of the border. Nobody seems to be in charge. She hasn't been there, and we have a humanitarian and national security crisis and health crisis unfolding there. So we're going to hear directly from.
Since being appointed by border czar by President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris has undoubtedly been a complete failure in her job. Kamala Harris is not only the border czar, she is also the czar of chaos.
Not lie about it. You don't get to ask any more questions. I'm done with you because you're the cause. You're the cause of our country. You're the cause of our country being divided. You're the cause of our country being divided. You're the cause of President Trump almost being assassinated. You're the cause of everything wrong in America. Evidence for these claims? No, you're done. You're done.
In a new poll conducted by YouGov, 9 in 10 voters believe that Kamala Harris played a role in covering up Joe Biden's deteriorating health. 68% believe she had, quote, a great deal to do with the cover-up. 17% say somewhat. Only 7% say a little. And a tiny fraction, 4%, say she had nothing to do with it. That means a total of 92% of voters think Kamala Harris is to blame for the lie.
Would you call the border secure?
The border is secure, but we also have a broken immigration system, in particular over the last 4 years before we came in, and it needs to be fixed.
We're going to have 2 million people cross this border for the first time ever. You're confident this border is secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration. But there are still a lot of problems that we are trying to fix, given the deterioration that happened over the last 4 years.
Different name, further left. She's a real liberal. They rented Biden. They own her, so that'll be the race she'll own. She was in the room when they made all these decisions that have destroyed the country.
The enthusiasm gap has changed.
Both sides are going to have enthusiasm in the end.